short time ago, Mayor Eric Adams announcing he will be running for re-election, but as an independent. It comes one day after federal corruption charges against him were dismissed. Let's go now live to Elijah Westbrook. He's in Times Square, where Adams is expected to appear today at a mayoral candidates forum. Elijah?
And that's right, Mary. And as you know, there had been some speculation just over the past few weeks regarding the political party affiliation, if you will, that Mayor Adams would join as we inch closer to the elections. And just moments ago, as you mentioned, we now know that Mayor Adams is expected to run for re-election as an independent. That information coming down in the form of a 6-minute video he posted on X. Let's go ahead and take a look at what he had to say.
But the dismissal, the bogus case against me dragged on too long, making it impossible to mount a primary campaign while these false accusations were held over me. But I'm not a quitter. I'm a New Yorker. And that is why today, although I am still a Democrat, I am announcing that I will forego the Democratic primary for mayor and appeal directly to all New Yorkers as an independent candidate in the general election.
All right, so you heard it right there from Mayor Adams himself. And, you know, the sudden news comes as his federal case was dropped yesterday in time for re-election, a race he confidently emphasized that he intends to win. CBS News New York has learned that Adams is participating in a mayoral candidates forum sponsored by the National Action Network starting at 2 p.m. today here at the Sheraton Times Square Hotel. It's where former New York State Assemblyman and City Comptroller Scott Stringer, Senator Zelnor Myrie, and former Governor Andrew Cuomo are expected to be in attendance, just to name a few. And it's certainly no secret the mayor's poll numbers are low, and experts say he has to convince voters he's the best man for the job after a rocky term that included the resignation of 2 waves of deputy mayors. But again, this event kicks off at 2 p.m. and it's likely this breaking news, this recent announcement, will be talked about among he and his challengers at the mayoral forum. Of course, we are standing by for that. In the meantime, we are live from Times Square. I'm Elijah Westbrook, CBS News, New York.
Elijah, thank you. All of this happening after a federal judge agreed to the U.S. Department of Justice's request to drop the charges against the mayor with prejudice. That means Adams cannot be retried on the same charges. Joining us now is civil and criminal attorney Dante Mills. Good morning.
Mary, good morning. Good morning, Mary. How are you?
The DOJ originally wanted to dismiss the case without prejudice. Why do you think Judge Dale Ho opted to issue a dismissal without prejudice instead?
I think Judge Ho did the right thing, because if you dismiss the case or allow the case to be dismissed without prejudice, that means that essentially the Trump administration, who instructed the Department of Justice to drop these cases, could hold them over Mayor Adams' head and say, you do what we want you to do as mayor, or we will bring these charges back. So the judge said, if you're going to drop them, you have to do it with prejudice, so you can't hold anything over his head. It's interesting, and we should note that no part of this was there discussed that he didn't do what he was alleged to do. The reason the Department of Justice, at the instruction of President Donald Trump, decided to drop those charges was because they wanted Mayor Adams to do what they wanted to do politically and be in a position to be able to do that. And we saw Mayor Adams' position change on immigration and other things shortly after. Donald Trump instructed the Department of Justice to drop these charges. So you have to wonder, was that the exchange for these charges going away? The
judge criticized the DOJ's rationale for dropping the case, but still granted the motion. Legally, what options really did he have?
He didn't have many, because you can't force. He couldn't prosecute the case for the Department of Justice. So if they decided they're not going to prosecute the case, then there was no one to move this case forward. But he did have to approve it. And in approving it, he simply said, OK, you don't want to prosecute. I can't stop you, but you can't bring these back. So he put that stipulation on it. But otherwise, there was not much that he could do, because he couldn't step into the shoes of the prosecutor and prosecute the case himself. So if they weren't going to do it, and these charges were going to go away either way.
Does this ruling leave any room for other legal actions against the mayor, or is this truly the end of his legal troubles?
It's the end of his legal troubles as far as this set of facts is concerned. When you withdraw or dismiss with prejudice, it simply means you can't bring charges again for this same circumstance or these set of facts. So the mayor's in the clear. But again, you wonder what the exchange was, because we do have the news now that he's no longer a Democrat. He's running as an independent. Was that something that he promised Donald Trump's administration that he would do, that he would switch parties? And New York has to be concerned if the exchange was so big that he would change his party so that he could get this favor from Donald Trump and carry out his agenda. So I'm sure the voters in New York are going to consider that when it's time to come, to vote in this general election.
Yeah, that was a big breaking news item this morning, certainly. Just on this case, what kind of precedent does this ruling set for future corruption cases against elected officials?
It's not good. I mean, the precedent isn't really set that if you're in office, you can't be charged, although that's the argument that the Department of Justice made. They said they didn't want to move forward with these charges because they wanted the mayor to be able to operate without having to take the time to defend these charges. You would think that that means if you're in office, you're safe from prosecution. That shouldn't be the case. If you do something wrong in office that they can prove or they can get past the grand jury to bring charges, I think you should be held responsible. So you would hope that this doesn't set the precedent, but it really doesn't, because the next Department of Justice can decide to move forward with charges whether a politician is still in office or not. It just really just sets the precedent that you can't tell someone you're going to drop charges if they do what you want them to do, and if they don't, you're going to bring them back. This judge just kind of made it clear, if you're dropping charges, you're dropping them forever, so you can't hang that over somebody's head. But again, you should be able to bring charges against someone sitting in office moving forward if the Department of Justice decides to do that. So
what does this case tell us about the limits of judicial power when the DOJ decides not to pursue a case?
There really is none. There really are. There are limits. There's nothing that a judge can do because the judge cannot prosecute the case. And the judge in this case, because the Department of Justice and Mayor Eric Adams' counsel was on board with each other. They both agreed that this case should not go forward. So you have both parties saying we're not going to move this case forward, but the judge still did that independent review. And in that review, it said there's really nothing he can do to stop these charges from being dropped. But he did add that stipulation that you can't bring them again because you don't want to give that impression that this is a favor. And if he doesn't carry out the favor, they can simply just bring the charges back. But the judge's power is limited. He oversees charges that the Department of Justice brings. He doesn't bring those charges himself. So he was in a position where nobody wanted to move forward. He was kind of stuck with the empty courtroom, essentially, and he had to let it go, but he just made sure it was done the right way.
Civil and criminal attorney Dante Mills, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
For a timeline breakdown of Mayor Adams' legal troubles, you can head over to CBSNewYork.com. And as we told you, there is that breaking news that he is running as an independent. We'll get another live update from Elijah Westbrook at the top of the hour.